People that are good at talking and fighting?
Sure.
Okay, people that are very good at talking and fighting. Well, my co-host, for example, on Fighter and the Kid.
Oh, what's his name?
Brendan Schaub. Very funny man.
Oh,
Cracks
he's
me up.
funny?
Very funny. Very strong.
Do you legally have to say that?
No.
All right, so Bryan Callen just went on Matan Evans' podcast, and I got to give Bryan credit for going on here because this kid, he does not hold back, and he follows the Fighter and the Kid subreddit. You know, he's familiar with all the Fighter and the Kid lore. He's a homeless cat and a big fan of Brendan Schaub's comedy career. Like in the beginning of the podcast, he even referenced one of Brendan's classic bits from the Gringo Poppy.
You ever tried a Mexican cookie? It's like a chocolate chip with salsa all over it.
What the fuck's a Mexican cookie? What are you talking about? It's like a chocolate chip with salsa all over it? What are you talking about? I'm like, that's a terrible idea. I'll take it.
Who would have introduced me to a chocolate chip cookie?
Chocolate chip with salsa all over it.
Somebody of Latin descent.
Where's Brendan Schaub from?
It's Schaub. You have to say his name right.
Brendan Schaub?
Yeah, Brendan Schaub.
I got introduced to it, and it's my favorite food.
Really?
Yeah,
From
the Mexican
Brendan?
cookie.
Oh, you know what, dude? You fucking led me down the rabbit hole, and I fell for it. And you're looking up like you don't know what you're saying.
I don't know.
See?
And Matan spent like half the podcast just roasting Brendan, and he kept trying to get Bryan to admit that he's not funny, which Bryan handled surprisingly well, considering just a few years ago he was really defensive of Brendan, and if somebody were to make fun of him, Bryan would just lose his shit like he did with Bobby Lee, you know, when he thought he was running the Fighter and the Kid subreddit, and he just went off on him and threatened him. So that situation must have humbled Bryan quite a bit, because now he doesn't seem to get anywhere near as worked up about it. Like, the fact that he doesn't flip out at Matan here shows he's come a long way.
Comedians I don't think are funny.
That you're friends with. Okay, let's go.
But
Nobody answers. Every time I ask one of these stupid guys who's friends with Joe Rogan.
But to be honest with you, all my friends are funny.
No, they're not. No.
Who do you think of my friends is not funny? Careful.
I think it's integral for a successful podcast to have a good co-host. Okay, let me phrase it like this. Is Theo Vaughn funny?
Yes.
He's very funny.
Yes.
Is your co-host funny?
I think my you mean on the Fighter and the Kid?
You didn't say.
Wait, on the Fighter and the Kid?
Is Theo Vaughn funny?
On the Fighter and Kid?
The Fighter and the Kid.
He's very funny.
No, he's not.
Oh, come on. You don't even listen to the podcast. You get your information from the community.
Another lawsuit.
No, you should be listening to the Fighter and the Kid.
Is this how you expected this episode to go today, or no?
Yes.
You did?
I did.
Well, then good on you for showing up.
Come on, bro. We're here, man.
Yeah, so Bryan was actually being a good sport about it, but I'm sure Brendan probably won't be too happy with this appearance. Even though I think this helped Bryan win some people over and was one of his funnier podcast appearances. Like, even people on the Fighter and the Kid subreddit were saying that, and they thought he did a good job rolling with the punches. And Matan, he also kept talking about the subreddit, and Bryan figured out that he doesn't even watch the podcast at all, but he keeps up with the subreddit, which obviously Bryan is a little insulted by, but again, he handles it pretty well. You know, he mostly just finds it funny. I mean, at this point, how could you not just laugh at it? That's what Brendan needs to learn to do. I mean, at least their show is still entertaining people in a way. I mean, ironically, Brendan's responsible for some of the funniest moments in podcasting or comedy. Like, some of the stuff he gets himself into is just unbelievable. Like, the whole Trug Walk situation, nothing will beat that. You know, the lawsuit, their fallout with Bobby Lee and everything to come from that. That was awesome. And another classic is when Brendan fired his Addy and Baddie wrangler, Mark Harley, and then he went rogue and joined the Fighter and the Kid subreddit and exposed Brendan for peeing in sinks, which then Howie Mandel called Brendan out for on his podcast.
So you posted the fact that we were going to be watching this. My Twitter feed lit up a little bit more to say, don't go to the bathroom there because you piss in the sink.
Where?
What? They said that you said this out loud.
Wait,
Does he piss in the sink
don't
here?
Go to, I've done it maybe
seen it.
once.
Okay, but
Because
that was the
it's
whole thing.
emergency.
Nobody's talking about the fight. Everybody was saying, Howie, how are you going to go there? He pisses in the sink. Brendan talked about he pissed in the sink.
I had to pee in the sink one time. It was a state of emergency.
And then also there's the time Brendan hired kind of like a Make-A-Wish fan of his who just wanted to meet Brendan, but then Brendan convinced him to move out to LA and come work for him. So the kid probably thought his dreams came true, but then only like a year into it, I guess Brendan realized he wasn't really doing anything for the show, or he couldn't afford him or something. So he fired him on like Christmas Eve and pawned him off on some other podcasters. Now he's just being passed around. Like, first I saw him on John McCarthy's podcast, you know, one of the refs for the UFC. And now I think Joey Diaz is stuck with him.
But then you say Leon, but then he's
Brother,
got
who this guy?
He don't have question. He just listen us.
Yeah, he just produces this. He listens to us.
Go find something to do. Go play in traffic.
Go play in
Knock it off with the phone, George. Knock it off, please. For Christ's fucking sake.
But I'm doing good, dude.
Yeah, so because Brendan felt like he needed to try to make this kid's dreams come true, now these other podcasters are stuck with him. I mean, everything Brendan does unintentionally is hilarious, which is why even some of Brian's comedy friends keep up with all Brendan's controversy. You know, they do the same thing as Matan. They don't watch the podcast, but they'll follow the subreddit.
Do you listen to Fighter and the Kid?
I don't listen.
See, I knew it. It.
No.
You went like this. You went which means no.
I don't listen to the full episodes, but
there's so much nuance that you can't.
Well, I listen to. I hear about it from different sources.
So you're hearing a third party, dude.
I'll tell you this:
Brown
I'm
Schaub.
a big part of the community.
Are you talking about the underground community? You son of a bitch. Listen, Matan. I love that name. I'm gonna be honest with you.
You're changing the conversation.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I got carried away. Okay, listen to me.
There's a couple 100,000 of us now.
You're part of that community?
I started
bet you that
it.
guy is too.
And
you started it?
Oh, you know what email I use too?
Which?
You know.
What is it?
Tiger Belly.
Listen to me right now. I got some information.
See, this is why I have the great podcast, because nobody else would talk to you like this.
I know, and I appreciate it. And it's good that we're getting this out there.
Yeah.
Now look, Tiger Belly.
Now that I mentioned that, are you going to call me after this and threaten to kill me?
Never.
No?
Never.
I would guess that that's something you might do.
No, I would never do that. That
No,
was when I was
for
40.
sure?
That was when I was 48, bro. I've grown up.
This
Be
episode
honest.
might do good.
Yeah, it'll do very well.
It'll be seen by hundreds of thousands on a brand new platform.
What's that platform called? If you say Reddit, I'm going to freak out.
We both know it's Reddit. What am I bullying you?
Damn it, you're bullying me right now.
And it seems like the Fighter and the Kid subreddit has been pretty quiet recently. You know, like Brendan's been staying out of trouble. But now I think he's moving to Austin to get closer to Rogan, so that can make things interesting again. And maybe it'll get him back into stand-up. You know, Rogan just needs to let him perform at the mothership. But so far, he's refused to do that, which is funny considering Rogan is the one that got Brendan into stand-up. So I think he should give Brendan a shot, but I guess we'll see. So also during this podcast, Bryan, he admitted that the Fighter and the Kid has fallen off. So at least he could be honest about it. You know, it seemed like all the stuff he went through, like getting canceled and working for Steven Crowder and then the Bobby Lee stuff, you know, I think that all probably humbled him. And now he's just like, whatever.
Are you saying that my
podcast is not successful?
Your
Unlike
podcast
yours.
is more successful than mine. Now, my podcast used to be way more successful than yours. You know this, but you're too young to remember that.
Oh no, I've been there from the beginning.
Well, not really.
I have.
Well,
I've been watching the start. I've been
no, because you were.
Eventually, I unsubscribed.
You did?
But I subscribed to a different page.
You unsubscribed to my fucking podcast?
I unsubscribed from the YouTube. I subscribed to the Reddit.
That doesn't help.
You deal with the worst co-host every week.
That's fucking not true.
Why'd you almost laugh at that? That's
because you
not funny.
don't watch the podcast, so
Yes, I
how
do.
would you know that?
I might keep up with you more than you.
Okay, who was the last guest?
Brandon.
No, see? Fucking
I don't
wrong.
know.
I just got you.
You guys can't get guests anymore?
We get guests.
Yeah, you guys got
We've had some problems, but yeah.
Things
haven't been what they were.
Why do you think that is?
Because of some decisions. All right, what are you doing? Is that a victory thing?
I'm manifesting bad on you and your family and your kids and your wife and your mother.
Why are you doing that?
Also, at one point, Matan asked Bryan who his favorite comedians are, and he said Rogan was one of them, which is ridiculous. Like, there's no way he actually believes that. I mean, most people, if they were to say that, I would think they're joking. So Matan tried to get him to admit that Rogan's not a good comedian, and that was what Bryan was probably most taken back by during this podcast. He couldn't believe someone would think Joe's a bad comedian. Or it's more like he couldn't believe that someone isn't scared to admit that Joe's a bad comedian. And it's so funny, instead of Bryan explaining why he should respect Joe's comedy, or just being like, no, I actually believe Joe's funny, he just says, well, you know, Joe could destroy your podcast if he wanted to. Like, Matan should be careful about upsetting Joe, like all of Rogan's comedy friends who don't find him funny either, but won't admit it.
Sebastian Maniscalco's hilarious.
Okay, so
I have a lot of famous friends. Joe Rogan, I can keep going.
Well, I said, okay, well, let's move on to the next segment.
Sorry.
Who now the 5 least funny, so now you can get to those guys.
That's a fucked up question, bro.
It's a smart question.
But it's a
and you
smart
already,
question.
You already have one in there
It's
so
a
far.
smart question.
Yeah.
It's,
You already have the first one.
wait a minute.
I'm just assuming that you knew that was the next question. That's why you said guy at the end.
Dude, let me explain.
I'm just,
Matan, do you understand he could make one phone call? He could open his fucking window and whisper, and this whole podcast goes away?
Oh, are we talking about Brendan Schaub or Joe Rogan?
We're talking about Joe Rogan.
Oh, I love Joe Rogan. He's funny. Oh, but he's in that top 5, the second list. So now finish the next 4.
And if Joe actually has a good sense of humor, he would have Matan on his podcast. I mean, that would make for a great episode, you know, because there aren't many people that go on there and aren't afraid to troll him or bust his balls. So when it happens, it's hilarious. Like Mark Normand, he'll make fun of Joe. And Harlan Williams, last time he was on there, he trolled Joe most of the podcast. So hopefully we get to see that with Matan. And Bryan actually ended up putting in a good word for him when he went on there.
You know that kid, Matan?
No.
He's that kid, the Israeli kid who's like 17 years old and a complete troll. I did his podcast. It was so fun. But he's just like that. Those kids at that age, they are about just, there's no reverence to anything.
No.
They want to tear it all down.
Yeah, so hopefully that happens, or Bryan invites Matan on The Fighter and the Kid. That would make for a great episode too, and just not tell Brendan who he is and just have him show up and see what happens. I mean, that would definitely be one of their most viewed podcasts in a while, and I think people would probably gain some respect for Brendan. But let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments, and if you want extra content from me, there are over probably 120 exclusive videos on Patreon, and I post a new one every single week. Like I recently talked about Mark Zuckerberg's disastrous appearance on Joe's podcast, and also about how Joe is completely delusional now, like he's so far gone, and also about Wes Watson attacking one of his haters at the gym and proving he's the most pathetic person alive. I mean, it's unbelievable what he's up to. But yeah, make sure you check it out. There'll be a link in the description.